Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Pink Mike Legal Confessions. We are actually having a very interesting topic today. The episode you're going to be tuning into for today is called the HR Considerations for Small Businesses in New Remote Work Environment, which we all know we're all getting used to. And I think time and time again, people are hoping that there's more jobs like this. So we're going to hear from our expert today on how to handle this type of work. In general, as you know, the new remote work policy and the environment that has existed since COVID is here to stay. And I think there's an increasing number of employees that are reducing physical office space. They're looking to stay at home with their family, and it gives people and staff members the power to choose what kind of work they want to do at home. And for small business owners and human resource professionals, this means adjusting. This means policies have to change and systems have to change, and you sort of need to keep up with the times. So that's kind of what I think about with that. So as your viewers know, I'm attorney Stephanie Garces-Donay, the owner of Garces Law Firm in Arlington Heights, where we help you prepare for the unexpected, especially in the event of an unexpected absence. So today we have the pleasure of speaking with Susan Gillard, an experienced HR and executive management professional who has experience with virtual staffing and remote work environments dating back to long before the pandemic began. So, Susan, thank you so much for joining me today. I know that this remote era is nothing new to you, but I am so intrigued by what you do. So, please introduce yourself for the guests.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for inviting me. It certainly is a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to share with your audience and help them move their organizations forward because we all know life is about that lift. I don't want to actually bore you with a lot of details of my background. I'll make it quick. I have a Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and I'm an open book. You can find me and look up my street cred. What is important about me is my background, that I love life, business, and people. So for 20 years, I've guided companies and professionals to navigate their businesses and personal lives. I love to help others make their dreams come true. So I help students with interviewing, resume writing, how to get that great job out of college, executives find that next big move. I love seeing a small business get the lift it needs from my services. Not everybody needs a partner in business. Not everybody needs a full-time HR professional. So that's why I'm here today, building this nonprofit, Your Personal Season. And I've done a lot and want to share my experiences with others to help them to navigate their small business. So I want to see Stephanie succeed, and obviously Tiffany, who recommended me, succeed, and all of you all who are here today and took the time out to watch this episode. So let's go ahead and dive in, Stephanie. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for the background, and I appreciate your kind words. You know, it's people like you that actually, even just this last year, working with my new staff members and consultants, and kind of thinking bigger picture, you really start to realize, like you were saying, that dream is attainable. And a lot of small business owners, and I think personally for myself, I speak for this. Sometimes you feel like, can I wear so many hats? Can I expand the business? Can I do? Yeah, the answer is yes. You just need to have the right professionals, right, Susan? Because otherwise you cannot do it all. We cannot do it all, even though we want to.
Takes a village.
It's just, yeah, it's just going in circles and hoping for a different result. It's not going to work. So just to cover a couple topics today for the viewers to understand what we're talking about today. Again, if you're just tuning in, it's HR considerations for small business in the remote world era, where no work is being done in different work environments. So some of the topics we're going to cover today is common remote issues, common work that's remote. So, for example, adjusting schedules to childcare is huge. Tech security and at-home equipment is really big. Dress code via Zoom, the video chats. What does that look like? The other topic we're going to cover is HR considerations for staff that works from home. Reimbursement or compensation for work home at home employees. Maybe what is appropriate and perhaps inappropriate during video calls and Zoom, and all of the stuff that we dive in. So we know this expands, forever, but I think more now than ever, people are curious about the other topic, policies and procedures. The importance of a employee handbook. Small business owners should consider doing that. It's super important, and I think it actually probably establishes a long-term rapport with your staff, especially those that are remote. So we're going to dive right in. So just to recap, for those of you that are just joining us, a couple of people just joined us. We're covering HR considerations for small businesses in the new remote work era and this environment that we're now put in because of the pandemic. So today I have with me Susan Gillard, who actually knows a lot about this area. And you guys know who I am. I'm attorney Stephanie Garces Donay, owner of Garces Law Firm, helping the parents prepare for the unexpected. And we really just try to help people thrive in whatever it is that they want to do with their estate plan in their life. So that's what we do. But enough about me. Really quick, if you missed the episode from last week, we covered a very interesting episode about what to do if your children get into legal trouble. All people that have kids know that they have this fear of, could my kid get in legal trouble? Well, watch the show and you'll find out your options of how to avoid it and what to do if you end up in that scenario. So now, just kind of to jump in, Susan, what are some of the biggest concerns that you see from your clients that call you about, oh, I don't know how to, I don't know how to handle this, or I don't know how to handle. What is the biggest issue that you're seeing right now?
I think for a lot of the smaller businesses, right, it would be having the documentation in place for people to follow, right? Like that's going to be key right now. If you didn't have it before because people just showed up at your office and did all the things they're supposed to do, that's awesome. But there's really a lot to be said about like you said, the employee handbook and the policies that you write, because if you should get into some type of trouble, like you said, somebody's showing up to the Zoom a certain type of way, or there's all kinds of things that can happen at home that we could get to. But yeah, I would think that the documentation is going to be key for any small business owner right now, and relaying the expectations to your staff of what you do expect on a day-to-day basis, being in a remote environment.
Yeah. And speaking in remote environment, I know we were joking before the live about working, right? So how does one track an employee to make sure they're actually working during work hours and not goofing off or something like that?
Yeah. I would say that your performance management process is going to be key in that, right? Like one of the organizations that I work with, they're on every 6 week with their people. It is a performance culture. They drive performance. It's not an annual basis that they're like, hey, this last year you did X, Y, Z. It's thanks for the last 6 weeks. Now what are we doing the next 6 weeks? And they're always tracking it. So having that touch point all the time, you are able to communicate the immediate needs that you're having or seeing, right, in a coaching session rather than a discipline session, right? Like, hey, I know this is new to everybody and we want to make sure that you're doing it right, but I noticed the other day that you came looking a little crazy, or, we're going to need you to tone it down. So being able to have those touch points more frequently, if you are on an annual basis of your performance management, would be, I think, step number one, to look at what you're offering to tighten that up, to be able to gauge it every few weeks or monthly or however it works for your small business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. That's actually a great idea. And you're actually giving me ideas as I'm sitting here. But perhaps, the point of like the touch point. I mean, I think a lot of times we do get used to annual reviews, because in a place where, and I say this because I have staff members that have worked with me for over a year, of course you see them every day. And I think that's the disadvantage, right? You don't actually get to see people every day anymore. So having an annual review may not be the best method. Would you agree with that?
I do agree, and it is. I'm a member of SHRM and HR Houston. It's a huge push, to be driving performance, and so a lot of companies are going away from the annual. It's antiquated. It's old. We don't need to do that anymore. So if you want to be at the top and at the front line of your competition, then it is something to look at, because you're trying to develop and grow people from that, and you can really harness the performance aside from, like you said, on an annual basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So here's another question, just about this topic. Do you think it's essential for staff to use company issued laptops?
I think that your staff should be using your equipment because it is your proprietary information on that equipment. And therefore, it is not the staff members. You can recall it anytime you want. It is your equipment. I don't suggest them using their own stuff, because if your information is out on their computer and it gets hacked, now you're in big trouble as an owner. So don't let them use their own equipment for your business needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of going off of that, do people kind of inquire about cybersecurity. I know actually this is something that I personally am in the works of doing, because I know what you just said, the proprietary information, the hackers, just the ability, even having it on your phone. I recently put together like those two-step authentication, factors.
It's huge.
It's super important, but sometimes it's not enough, right? Which is the crazy part. So I'm curious, do you push for that, and how do you really explain that for the viewers? Because some people may not even know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah. Cybersecurity is huge. And I mean, again, if your information is out there, right, and the client's information is out there, then we have a breach of confidentiality that might be released. And that ends up being a whole other can of worms that nobody wants to deal with. So I think that, if you're requiring, right, a certain equipment or a certain type of
something,
security needs to be at the helm, right? You would train your employees on not to open certain types of emails, not to go to certain types of websites. There are a lot of different services out there that make you aware. There's Ninjio. They have really cute, quick snippets because people don't like to spend a lot of time learning about that.
No.
But it's fun and it's interactive, and your family would like if you have kids and they could watch it too and learn about cybersecurity as well. And I think it's really minimal cost. So there are a lot of programs out there like that will train your people in an exciting way so that maybe, right, they bite on. And then also have an IT person, right? You have to be the one that is navigating what that looks like if there is a breach, right? Like, what does that look like and how are you going to deal with it? So having that risk plan in place is really important as well.
And do you ever have like the flip side where people ask you, how do we educate our clients? Because I know for us, we have a lot of education that we do really just in the process of opening the files, when we tell clients, just so you know, if you get an email regarding this, we don't typically send emails that way, so kind of explaining, is there a way for small business owners to prepare the clients? Because, a lot of small business owners are email heavy. So how do they educate their consumer?
That is a really great question. I think that if you started with like maybe a intro email to your client, right? Like, this is something that's really important to us. We want it to be really important to you also. So please note that you'll never see anything, like always look for this in our message. You can watermark your messages. There's a security feature that allows you to do that. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But yeah,
I was gonna ask you, I'm like, we won't go into detail, but we know it exists.
yeah. And if you reach out, I'll look for it, right? Like, I don't have a problem, but there's all kinds of resources out there that you can do as a small business, right? To let your clients know that this is something that is important to you and that you're passing along to them. And maybe it is something that you look up and you as the small business provide that education to your clients, right? Like, hey, we just want to add this extra value to you and your organization because we want to see you be protected as well if you're not aware.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's a two-way street. I know, we are very email heavy. I think every law firm is, and there's always this, 2% chance, right? Or maybe it's more than that, but that somebody is going to be, doing something malicious, whether that's on your computer or an employee or, click here, stranger things have happened, right? Because if you think about like these big companies, like if you even Google like hack or whatever, and it's huge companies. I mean, if they're doing it to the huge companies, I know that small business owners are a target. So it's interesting to hear about this because I don't think it's talked about enough, because I think we, as small business owners, we get in the mindset of like, let's keep working towards, the dream, the goal, but then, there has to be parameters.
Not the protection of the risk. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions that somebody had for us about this topic is, am I required to pay for an employee's home internet, phone and cell phone if they work from home?
No, that's all in your policy and what you as an organization say you're going to do. Providing the equipment, right, and having an expectation. I have a client that has an expectation. They lay it all out, right? You need to have XYZ of security and all these things to be able to work remote in the first place.
Right.
So, right. Yeah, if you don't have those things, then you have to come into the office. Is their take, right?
Yeah.
Took away the MiFis. There was plenty of people that had been field employees for many years,
Right.
and had these MiFis and printers and all these things. And they just came in and took it all back because they said, no, we're not going to have to, we don't need to. So that is a real thing. You do not have to provide the printer ink and all this stuff to their home office. It would be a requirement for them to have that basic stuff.
Yeah, basic. And that's a great question because if you think about it, in the office, of course, we have ink, we have printers, we have everything here, but we're in the office. So the remote environment is just so interesting because there's these little things, like there's benefits, obviously, people like working remote.
Yeah,
but
I don't have to pay for my gas, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to pay for my gas. It's okay if I pay for my ink.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that I'm like actually not putting miles in your car or not having to pay. That's the exchange. But it's like, it's, you come here, yeah, you spend on your gas, but then we pay for everything else. So yeah, I agree with that. I think it's like a tit for tat, you're getting one thing for another.
Yeah. And you can be the company that says, I'm going to give you X amount of ink every month, or I'm going to, like the benefit is yours to choose, right? If you want to cover these things, then you're more than welcome to, right, as an organization. But then you might get into the a hairy situation that maybe you just could avoid and save yourself some money.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes as small business owners, we just feel this obligation perhaps to, give the employees everything that they need. And if they're asking for reimbursement and things, but I guess it depends too. I know sometimes for law firms, I know where I used to work, or in general, many law firms, other law firm employees, like other attorneys, could definitely have their phone paid for and whatever, but that's a little bit separate because I think, that doesn't make them fully remote. I think it's just company policy that you're paying for the phone or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if a phone is part of the deal, right? Like you either buy them a phone and they use your company phone, which is what a lot of my clients do. Because again, the proprietary information, I don't want it on your personal cell phone. I don't want you using your personal cell phone for my business, right? Because it's not your business, it's my business, and I don't want it. Yeah. And that's really important. So another reason why you might not pay for the bill, but pay for the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think, these things are becoming more relevant. I know now more than ever, I've been seeing more employees expecting to work remote, especially when they're applying to jobs. I know when I just recently hired somebody, but before that, when I was looking, a lot of people expected to be remote. Now, it's hard because depending on the field that you're in, you could sort of work remote, but it's also getting trained remote, I feel like, is a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
But how do people deal with that? I mean, in your experience, how do you advise clients about training that remote employee that perhaps doesn't have the FaceTime or, doesn't ask face-to-face the questions about, the work they're expected to do?
Right. Yeah. I think that I've seen a multitude of clients do different things that seem to fit their specific position, right? Because a lot of times if you have hourly types of positions, it's going to require them to come in and learn something face-to-face with someone else.
Yeah.
And so I've seen them come into the office for a certain number of weeks and then go remote, right? And then I've also seen companies train interns via Zoom meetings. So it all depends, I guess, on the job, the project. The level of trust comes from you, right? Like,
Yeah,
if
I
you're
agree.
able to get it done, are you going to be the one that's able to go to them and say, you're not meeting my expectations? Or are you going to let it continue, right? So that always sits with us as the leader.
Yeah. Well, I think you lead by example, right? Like I think, I know I always think it's important for business owners to continue to communicate. And a lot of times we do hired help, which is great. The help is definitely needed, but there has to still be a level of interaction because I've noticed, more and more interaction with the remote employee. I think builds confidence. I think it builds trust. And quite frankly, it gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I know you asked me this, but I wanted to ask you more questions. And by the way, I would do it this way, and this is why, which you can't really get in an email, And I think that's the important part about even training and just trying to do your best as a small business owner to make sure that person is ready to do what you're expecting them to do.
Right. And really, like you said, training the person, right? Even even like this, right? There are students that are learning, that have been learning online for I don't know how long. They get degrees, they pass with flying colors and have, you know, awards and honors. And so
Yep.
I'll listen to older leaders, no offense to any of our generational folks, right? But we have a thing in our head that if you weren't sitting there in a classroom, right, you didn't get the instruction. If you weren't sitting in the boardroom with me, you didn't get that. But it's not the case, right? We know that the internet has made it so our world so small. We can be anywhere at any time. I can hit in right on my teams and get into whoever and be like, hey, could you talk real quick, right? Like, and so I think that has a lot to be said where you're spending the time with the person. I think is the most important thing, whether it's internet or in person, whatever
Yeah,
works for your
absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think that's great. I think it's great to remember, like, in a way, yeah, you don't have to be in person, but just the old fashioned phone call, a Zoom call, something to connect. Because I do find that a lot with running a business, unless you tell the person this is what I'm wanting you to do, or if you dance around the issue, you'll get two different results
It's true.
because of the communication that you're giving or lack thereof.
Yeah. Expectation. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to do a bad job for you. Nobody. There's no reason. You don't wake up. Your employee that drives you nuts does not wake up going, today I want to drive Season crazy. They don't know how to meet your need. And so you're not communicating something effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's a good point. And aside from that, we talked a lot about Zoom calls and whatnot. This seems funny, but how does a small business owner kind of handle a team member that dresses inappropriately for work calls? And when I say inappropriately, I'm not saying that gender specific. I think I've seen people of all genders, I should say, dress inappropriately. So, what does that look like, and how do people address that issue?
Yeah. Again, it comes back to your education and your policy, right? Like, how are you portraying yourself? People are looking at you and however you're dressing and what you're expecting of them, right? Is it outlined somewhere, right? So that you can go back and say, hey, we implemented the remote work policy and it says that you're going to, from the neck up at least, look halfway decent, have a shining appearance with your hair or your whatever, like you brush
Yeah.
your teeth. However your policy would outline it. But that again is in your training and your expectation and your delivery to your people and
Yeah.
what you're wearing. I had this leader once that we were in a hospital setting and she'd always wear flip-flops into the administration area, like around. And so other people, right, would see her with her fancy shoes and stuff. And so they'd want to wear their fancy shoes and they might be clinical type person, right? And so
Yeah.
you can't really be a clinical type person going into these areas you're not supposed to. You're supposed to have closed-toed shoes. And so it became this huge thing. We had to release a new policy and go train all the staff. And we even had pictures of shoes so that people wouldn't be confused, like of what types were acceptable and what weren't acceptable. And sometimes that's just how you have to do it, right? You just have to drive it all the way down so that everybody understands what the expectation is.
Absolutely. And I used to work at a place. I was just remembering that when you said different expectations, I worked at a place once that there was a policy that came down about perfumes. Perfumes, colognes, do not wear any at all. That was the policy. We just don't wear it because, people were complaining about, sneezing or having allergies to, or I don't like the scent. And obviously in Zoom, you're not going to have that issue, but it's synonymous with what we're talking about, because I think if you really do have to dumb it down and you do have to say, yes, wear closed-toed shoes as opposed to flip-flops, because people will not get the picture. Even if you do lead by example, I think you actually have to say it, especially if you're concerned about it. So it's really funny that you bring that up.
It's a huge thing. And I think that we sometimes lose track of what we have control of, right? As leaders,
Yeah.
like you said, you're focused on making a sale, you're focused on getting the next product out. You're not focused on, the baseline. And sometimes we have to come back to the baseline.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one of the questions that came in, it's kind of regarding, and this is actually interesting because I think everyone can relate to this. It's regarding an employee that you want to terminate. How many, is there a warning you're supposed to give them? How many warnings before you actually terminate them from employment?
Let's always assume that we made the best hire and that it's our development that needs work. Okay, so that's the first place we're going to start. And again, that you had mentioned it before is the employee handbook, right? But
This
and
thing.
yeah, but it's huge, right? And I always say that if you're a small business or whatever, make them little so that people will have them, right? Like it's great that it's on the internet. It's great that you put that there, right? But I like something in my hand. I want to be able to look in my bag and pull it out and be like, okay, this says this, right?
Yep.
And I think that that's where that's at, is starting your discipline is with what you expect. So some companies put in, like different levels of what, maybe A, B, and C, and an A is terminable, right? Like,
Yeah.
that anything in this, you steal, you lied on your application, you're terminated, right? Like, and then there might be like a B, like you're third and final, right? Depending on what your levels set up.
Yeah, levels, right.
C, you might have, you did 3 things, and then the third time or the fourth time you're out at the door, right? Like, we keep talking to you. Progressive discipline and your documentation, right, is key when you're going to go through like any potential unemployment claims. I know lawyers always love the documentation. HR is the same way. When I have a leader come say, I want to fire someone, I'm always like, tell me why, right? Like, let me see what you got. Let me see the paper.
Yeah, what do you have?
Right, because you could just not like me, right? Like, or not like what this person is doing, right? Like, and you just need to coach them, but you're lazy and you don't want to coach them because you're not that leader. There's so many things that, again, we got to go back to our small business handbook and say, what am I going to tolerate? What am I not going to tolerate? And how does that look? How am I going to set people up, right? Like, you don't want to fire your people. You don't hire them to fire them. There's a huge cost, right? And so you want to be able to sit and work with them. And that's, again, the 6-week coaching. If you're doing that, you don't need rules, right? You don't need to have rules, because every 6 weeks we meet with you. I mean, you still have your rules.
But I know what you mean. You don't,
but
you're enforcing.
Right. You're having those conversations. You'd be like, every time you come to this meeting, every Wednesday when you come to the meeting, you're very negative in the meeting. It puts people off in the meeting. You want to type that up. You want to talk to them about that immediately, right? You don't want to 17 Wednesdays from now, right, be like, we're firing you because of this. So there's got to be that path of, we've had this discussion and we keep having this discussion, and you don't seem to want to change your behavior. And so that really think is key for businesses, is to have that documentation. Should you end up in an issue where you do need to file an unemployment, go to unemployment hearing, any type of wrongful termination. Again, being a small employer, if you sit under a certain number, right, you're not held to the same standards as a lot of the bigger organizations, but it's still good to operate as a bigger organization, because the laws and rules that have been put in place are there for the favor of the business and the employee.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. I mean, I think sometimes as small business owners, we forget that we are held to the same standard as a huge company. So, and you're right. Maybe we can get away with not being super formal, but yes, to an extent, small business owners should consider it, because I think the outcome is better when you have documentation, expectations, and kind of going off of that. I was remembering that one of the topics that we meant to cover, and you sort of already did, is this employee handbook seems super important, especially inappropriate like language, or perhaps sexual harassment is really big, especially with the Me Too movement, that sort of thing. These are, and again, as an attorney, it's liability, arena. And so if once you step into the liability arena, you don't have any way to defend yourself unless you have something in place. And I'm sure my employment law friends agree with that, because once the damage is done, it's very hard to say, oh, had we just done this.
Well, you never did anything about that sexual harassment case. You never did anything to fix that. And now you're getting sued. And now that person could potentially take your business, right? Because do you have the financial ability to go and fight this person in court because you didn't have these things set up in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. And kind of going off of that, one of the things I wanted to talk about, and maybe this is something we can brief the viewers on, but it seems that one of the also common issues of working at home with children, or perhaps another, significant other in the room. How do you handle like adjusting the schedules with children? I know plenty of stay-at-home, working parents are faced with that. So how do you advise clients about that scenario, I guess?
Yeah. Again, I think that in your remote policy outlining limiting distractions, again, we do need to have grace, right? If we're in a weird situation right now, so for you to grind on somebody about, like we talked about childcare or whatever, I mean, if this is extensive, right? There's the childcare issue seems to go on and on and on, right? Then you should have a conversation, right? Like, we're going to need you to figure that out. But ultimately, right, if the place is closed down, we've had this in some of my clients are in small towns, and the one daycare shuts down. I mean, they have to work from home. They can no longer come into the office if we want them to work, right? And again, we stick to the performance management. So again, if it becomes a distraction, we want to talk to them about it. We just want to coach them on it. We want to help them, right? You want to help your people. But if it were to become an abuse, right, on the policy that you've set up, then you'd want to make sure that you're addressing that. I know that some of my clients love to see if we're on a call at like 4, my kid is coming in from the bus, right, and it's time for hugs, and you're just gonna have to wait, right? Like, you're just gonna have to wait. I'm sorry, the hug is gonna come first. It'll be all right. And people appreciate that. It's like, hi, Lincoln, or whatever, right? Like, so I think it's just embracing these changes, right? And being open to families and being that company that is supportive of your people, watching for the abuse and having the policies set in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I think I could say this, with confidence, that I think sometimes if you build that trust and you build the communication, it's better all around, especially if you're giving the employee what they need. The employee, sometimes they don't have a choice. Like you were just saying with your child getting off the bus. I mean, that's so funny, because I was just thinking, if you were on a call that wasn't Zoom, no one would ever know that you gave them a hug. But the fact that you're on a Zoom call, everything is being watched at all times. And now with the way things are, I don't think this is going away. What are your thoughts on that, Susan? Do you think that this is going to continue? The remote work is going to be thriving?
Yeah, I don't see why not, right? I mean, we have come so far. I used to tease. I remember teasing like maybe 10 years ago when I was in HR about how I didn't need to be there, right? As the director, I didn't need to be here. You just call my cell phone, because I worked in a hospital environment. The phone rang 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So yeah, I can't possibly be there all the time. And there should be like those little phone booths, and like you could walk in it and the light would turn red on the outside, so people would know, don't go, you're right, they're busy. And it would just pop up to the screen and say, hey, you have a HR need, right? Like, and now here we are here, and we have these biases set in our head for what it used to be like if you got a distraction during a meeting. Well, your bias needs to change if that's how you think of things, right? Because we are going to embrace each other. We are going to embrace this difficult time. And I think that as a small business owner says a lot to your people, right? Like, I've had small businesses not take paychecks so that their people would stay employed during the downturn, right? Like, their business is not open, but their people are still getting paid. They're not, but their people are. And so it says a lot, because your people are the bread and butter, right? I mean, those that make you the money for the most part is all these people that are working for you. So loving them and appreciating them right now is probably key. And again, those policies, it's always going to come back to your documentation no matter what anyways.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I appreciate you talking about this issue, because I think sometimes it's kind of, people think it's not going to be permanent, but I think you can agree that I don't think any of us thought that at this point in time, we would still be working remote. We would still be having COVID concerns, restrictions, and depending on what happens. I know you're in a lot warmer state than I am, but in Chicago, at least, when it gets cold, it's cold and people are sick, and so I can only imagine that the restrictions will remain. The remote working from home scenario is probably going to be like that for a while. I know I have a couple of friends that work for bigger companies, and they've told them, you can come back in 2022 already. So this is not going away.
Yeah. And I don't think, right, when you look at it, even from a small business perspective, you got to find the wins in this whole situation as well, right? Like, the fact that you maybe don't have to pay for a lease space anymore is probably pretty nice. If you can just gather your team up at, a place where, hotels still do all the joint rooms, so you can go there or whatever. I just think there's a lot more creativity that can happen with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, people being able to be free. They don't have to wait. I don't know. We've noticed in a lot of my clients that the sick time and the sick requests have just plummeted. Like people, I don't need to call in sick because I don't want to drive to work today. I don't need, like I just got to get up and walk into my office and do the job, right? Like
Maybe in your pajamas.
yeah, I mean, some people, right? I mean, if you don't have to get on camera,
Right.
they have it easy, and you're not paying for lunch, you're not paying for gas, so your company's also not paying for a lot of things too. With that said, though, I think it's important that if your people are not coming to the office, that maybe you send something to their homes, right? Like appreciation gift or a coffee or whatever it is, right? Shoot them a Starbucks thank you card or something, because again, if they are social people, we have to watch the different personality types, right? You want to, mental health is huge right now. Watch your people
Right.
for that. I think that that's a huge adjustment for some folks.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think certain things too, it's like different generations, I think, expect different things from
Yeah.
this, remote work environment. And especially with, it's funny because even I had, questions about it before we instituted a remote work from home policy. And it's difficult to make the decision, but at the end of the day, I think like safety and your clients, your staff's like well-being and mental health is super important, because I think that is what you need to maintain for everything else to stay afloat. So yeah, and it's great to know that you have so much expertise, and thank you so much for sharing that. If any of the viewers would like to contact you for your expertise, where can they contact you?
You can feel free to reach out to me at yourpersonalseason@gmail.com. Oh, there it is. And my phone number is 847 Yay, Illinois, 431-652. And I'm happy to help anyone. Right now, I'm in the process of setting up this nonprofit. And I do all of this for pro bono. Because I just want to see people do awesome and be successful and not get stuck in some kind of weird risk situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And the name of your nonprofit is
Your personal
Your
season.
Personal Season. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm saying that right. That is so cool. And I actually love the plan word, the words there. No, that's excellent. And I think everyone can benefit from your services, especially now, because a lot of us are in the dark and trying to find our way as small business owners to make sure that we're doing the best we can. But it's hard because I don't think there's no precedent, right? No one knows how to really do this. We're just sort of guessing along the way. So it's people like you that help us find the light, so to speak, when it comes to this.
Thank
So,
you so much, Stephanie. I do appreciate it. And
yeah.
and thank you. I'm excited to know you because I might need your services as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say ditto. So we'll have to catch up after this show, because the more we talk, I'm like, yes, 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 that is what I need. Because I have plenty of viewers that watch this that are small business owners that could really, really benefit from your services. So thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise today. I also want to thank the viewers who watch all the time on the show and always have great feedback for me. So I really appreciate you guys joining Season and I. And we encourage you to reach out to her for your business needs, especially when it comes to HR, the working from home policies, employee handbooks. This sort of thing is invaluable to those business owners that are trying to figure this out. So yeah. So Season, I just want to thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. And I will definitely be reaching out to you after this.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I hope you have an excellent day.
You too. Thank you so much. And thank you, viewers, for your questions. And we will see you here on Tuesday next week at 1 o'clock.